Alright, hi guys. So I've had a few requests to do this, and I thought I'd take the time to instead do a battlefield where it's an Ultimate War season, and I'm trying to essentially get a sponsored account here to rank in the top 200 for Red Wings. So the way I found to do this, and I've done this on a K42 account with a lot of success last season, and I'm attempting to do this for my original K40 account now, is to basically limit. It's all about limiting sign-up power, but bringing enough that your alliance score still counts, and also so that you're pulling enemies that aren't going to be too crazy. So I've pulled a new server here. It's server 1888, and really they've got one big player, the 9 bill, that I need to worry about here, and all the other ones will be hopefully not going to give me too much problems. Basically, the whole premise of this strategy is holding buildings. So the length of the battlefield is 1 hour 55 minutes, so 115 minutes. So if you hold all 19 buildings for 110 minutes, that's like 45,000 personal points right off the bat. So you add on another 20 to 30,000 points from PvP, and you're going to be in right around that top 200 threshold, especially if you're on like the C3, C4 continents. If you're like C6, then the cutoff's going to be a little bit lower. But for me, I'm on continent 4, so I think last season the average was like between 70 and 75,000 a week. So we're going to run through this. It's on 2 times speed right now. We will fast forward through some of the more boring bits. I'll try and put in a bit of colour and commentary where applicable. I am doing this after the fact, so unlike you guys, I know what happens. Basically, this was a good battle to record because it shows the bits that can go well, the bits that don't go well, and kind of how to maybe think on your feet and figure it out along the way. So first things first, the 2 high value buildings are going to be the Knights Hall and Constantinople. So getting those in the name of the account that needs the points, and then having a backup reign in there. So in this case, my K42 has a relatively unbeatable single reign, so you're going to need to be K43, 44 or higher to stand a good chance of kicking those troops out. So I'm able to kind of comfortably put the K42's troops in some of these buildings after the fact without really any fear of needing to kind of check on that account. Taking the Knights Hall early is good because it A is worth more points, and B, it's going to start sending out those march lines, which is just, it's really your only ability to go find people on a pretty big map. So getting the point totals ticking here, slowly but surely, taking a few of these buildings nearby. Not too worried about portals right now. I'm just trying to get a bead on some of the biggest enemies and see what's going on. So this guy's a K42 on a new server. His buffs aren't great. He doesn't have flat refines, but he's just got thick layers, right? That first siege rally that I did is really just kind of a litmus test to see how the rest of the battle's going to go. And because I took out quite a bit of power, it wasn't a positive exchange, but it wasn't like I was doing under 100 mils worth of damage, so it tells me that he is killable. Granted, I will have to use both accounts, I think, to do the job. And right now, even though my K42 troops are safe, if I leave my K40's troops out in any buildings, the enemy K42 has enough firepower that he's probably going to kill them. And while that's maybe not necessarily a big problem, because I can always heal, it's not very sustainable, right? If I just do that for the entire fight, even if I own all the buildings, I'm probably going to lose on points, and that kind of defeats the purpose of doing this approach in the first place. So I'm using my Alliance War Screen, my reports from where people are scouting to kind of try and find this guy. I've already killed most of his high-level siege. I'm now using ranged rallies to try and whittle down some of his mounted. And as you can see here, he's also got some reins. And at this point, I don't really care. I'm not scouting in between. I have a rough gauge of how much damage my troops are going to be able to do. So I'm just kind of going in gung-ho with whatever I've got handy. Now that most of his high-level mounted's down, I'm going to use my own mounted troops to start cutting through his ground, because his ground troops are really the major pain that's going to prevent me from finishing him off with a ground attack. Also, because I want to build a little bit of momentum here, if I find the other players on his team that are going to be easier targets, I'm going to go kill them. In this case, that player was on the ball enough to port, so he was able to dodge that mounted rally. You can see there's a K37 here. I'm really attacking either with or without my K42 based on power and keep size. Unfortunately, this K37 is pretty well set up. I don't think I actually scouted him at any point, but he's probably got some pretty perfect refines. I chose to only solo him, I think, throughout, and lost probably like 7 or 8 times, which is a little bit embarrassing. But it's going to become pretty clear that I need to control the portals. So I need to port lock these guys. That basically means that they've run out of portals, they're unable to move, which makes it easier for me to find them and kill them without them running away. If they rain each other, that's not a problem. It's just more points for me overall. So the name of the game right now is to try and whittle down this K42, try and neutralize any of the high-level marches that he has left. Even if it means net losses, like that one's another loss there. I'm okay with that, because we're only 9 minutes into the battle. I'm probably behind on points. I don't know if the scoreboard's popped up yet. But basically this is just trying to take as much threat off the board as possible, so that when it comes time to controlling the whole map, I don't have any nasty surprises. Now, of course, the enemies can heal, but if they do, that's great. That's more points, right? So here's a K39. He's getting reins here, but he's gonna die, I think, after 1 or 2 attacks. Again, anything that's under 4 billion power, I'm not even bothering scouting. They're either going to be poorly set up, which means they're going to die in 1 attack, or they're going to be pretty well set up, which means they're going to die within like 2 or 3 attacks. I'm also waiting here when I'm setting these rallies. You'll see Catflaps takes 5 or 6 seconds to join. That's because I have to just jump to a different phone to add those troops in before I set it off. So I think that was like 3 attacks, but that K39's down. That last attack was quite a big skew in my favour as well, so I am starting to claw back the points a little bit here. So as you can see here, I took a portal, followed in with troops from the K42. You don't have to have, as the owner of a building, you don't have to have troops in there to get those primary points. You just have to have your name on the building. It doesn't matter if there are any troops in there or not. But because those points only start ticking in after being in there for 60 seconds, you don't want to take a building and then immediately pull, because if the enemy's paying attention, they're just going to retake the building again. So we're coming up to the 15-minute mark here. I've only got about half the map blue, so I don't have any of the mines, I don't have the rally hall, the hospital, I don't have the blessing towers. But because I have both Constantinople and the Knights Hall, those 2 buildings are worth, like Constantinople's worth basically 5 of the regular buildings, and the Knights Hall is worth 2, right? So the Knights Hall is giving you 32 points a minute, Constantinople is giving you 80 points a minute. So even though I don't own a ton of the map, I'm still able to kind of keep the points ticking up. In a more ideal matchup, you already want to have basically killed all the enemies at this point, and you need to be going into map control mode already after 15 minutes. There is very little benefit in you leaving people alive and leaving them with the ability to challenge your buildings. I want the mine here just for a little bit more edge on buffs. I realised I sent a march without a general, but there was only a 5-second window for them to take it back, so you know, no big deal. And again, following these march lines just to find people is really useful. So, and I'm just trying to follow and find whoever I can and get those points on the board. This K37 was kind of interesting. Rather than bringing the K42 and split the points, I tried to just solo him with the K40, and it took a lot of attacks to get him down, unfortunately. And here we are now. We're just trying to basically turn the map blue. So we're in control mode now, and in an ideal world, the enemies that are left give up. Right? They stop sending 1 troops to the buildings. I only have 12 marches here, and I'm trying to control 19 buildings. So as you can see here, like I took a march out of the rally hall, sorry, the Knights Hall, and someone came in and took it. So that's immediately like interrupted my points total for the amount of time that I lost the building plus 60 seconds. So that's, you know, not ideal. So the nice one here, the second biggest player that's currently on the map is going to die in 1 hit, but granted that was a rally, so I did lose some of the available points to my K42. And then the K42 next to him, I want to say he's going to die next. Now what I am starting to see, my screen is flashing red constantly, and that's not just because people are ghosting on me, but the players that are already dead, the smaller players on their team, are constantly scouting my buildings. So they're trying to see where my troops are not and then take them, and some of them are just blind, kind of sending 1 troops out just to harass and take back, turn red, honestly whatever they can, right? But my main priority now is, I'm kind of sporadically all over the place, but my main priority now really needs to be port locking the enemy troops. What that means, if their ports get to 0, if any latecomers turn up to the battle, they're going to get trapped in that sandbox on the far west side of the map, and they're not going to be able to move, which means they've got further to march to get to buildings. They're either forced to use march speeds, or they're going to give me the time to respond and get troops in ahead of them to lock down buildings. So here we go. This should be maybe the finishing blow for the K42. The only issue with him is, even though, you know, he's taking a lot of damage now, and I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, oh yeah, you know, this guy's not going to be a problem for the rest of the battle. He's ghosted most of his main marches, so, and he's pretty good at keeping them protected. So I'll try and catch him a few times later on in the fight, but he's pretty sneaky. Here again, I've taken my eye off the ball and I've lost Constantinople in the middle of the map. Again, that's a big blow. That's, you know, 5 buildings worth of points that's gone offline for over a minute. And it might not sound like much, but it's really a game of like every second, every minute counts when you're trying to go for your rankings in BOC. Lost Knights Hall again, just sloppy play. In a minute I'm going to kind of take inventory of like where all my marches are and where my K42 marches are. Part of the problem is I have a couple of overlaps. I think there are 2 or 3 buildings where I have cross reigns, which for this particular battle is unnecessary. They're really not trying to challenge any of my solo marches. They're just splatting against them with 1 troop. So at this point I'm going to increase the video speed here to 5x. It's going to be a little bit harder to keep track, but this is basically the boring part. I will point out a few things. So this is the point in the fight where, you know, you've killed the majority of the enemy's power. The enemy's probably trying to decide if they want to mount some kind of comeback or heal, or you know, if they've got other big players that are yet to arrive, kind of what the plan is, right? So in past experience, I've found that this is the point that kind of makes or breaks the enemy team. from a building point standpoint, I want them to be broken because it's just less work, right? I'm taking all the red buildings now. I'm using 1 or 2 marches to basically just bounce around the map, which becomes really, really expensive from a march speed up standpoint. And you have to do this with speeds just because if the owner of a building ports, any allied troops that are reinforcing that building automatically start going home. So those 6 buildings that currently have my K42 troops in, they all get kicked out. I have to speed them back. I have to speed them back in. It's a pain in the ass. It opens up the the vulnerability of them being taken in the interim, and that's not acceptable, particularly if they're the high value buildings or the portals. So this gets really expensive from a speed up standpoint. Not just the healing speeds you might have seen earlier, but I did a 4 or 5 build point heal. You definitely want to be going into these Ultimate War seasons with a full inventory, not just of regular speed ups, healing speed ups, but also having march speeds. So for this section of the video that I've sped up, it's about close to an hour of the battle that I'm speeding up 5x here. I'm going to burn through about 1,000 march speed ups. So, before an Ultimate War season, you want to make sure that you've got enough stock to last all 4 rounds. The last thing that you want to do is be in the top 200 going into the 4th round, and then you find that you don't have, the march speed ups to survive the last round to secure your spot. So that's kind of an important thing to note here. So you'll see every time I go back to the map, things are starting to look more blue, but there's 3 of these guys that are just persistently retaking buildings. That K37 apparently didn't die completely earlier on, so I'm also taking a little bit of time out to finish the job here, even though he's not completely dead. Chatting with a teammate, and basically just trying to stay on top of the map, right? So we've already lost 5 or 6 buildings while I was killing that guy and talking to someone in Whisper. So I'm literally pulling troops out, resending them. I'm complaining here that while they're all dead, they're not giving up, right? So a lot of enemies will give up at this point, and then you're in for a relatively easy ride for the rest of the battle. Even if it's just one enemy that's still being a thorn, they won't use march speed ups if they know they're gonna lose, right? So it's kind of it's a bit annoying, basically. And even there, you saw the K42 enemy mailed me, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you take 12 buildings and we'll take 7? We'll call it a day." And I was like, "Nah, I need all of the buildings to get my rankings." And you'll see his response in a minute. He's basically like, "Yeah, good luck with that." So. Yeah. So this is what I was saying earlier about the port lock. These 2 guys came in late. They're stuck in the sandbox. They're unable to get out. They're not big. I think that second one took 2 hits, but again, I have a pretty healthy point lead at this point. It's 37k to 23k. So I can afford to basically zero myself on the enemies. I'm not going to use the K42 anymore at all. I don't want to share any more points for PvP with my K42. So even if it means multiple splats, I'm going to do whatever it takes with my K40 to keep all those points to myself. It's starting to dawn on me here. We're approaching the hour mark. It's starting to dawn on me that I'm not going to win this building fight. They are going to keep taking them back. It's a little bit annoying, but it is what it is. It will happen to you at some point. I've had Ultimate War seasons where people just roll over after 20 minutes and then they close their phone and just don't bother, which is nice, but at the same time, I kind of want these guys to keep fighting in the way of healing and actually trying to get points off my marches and buildings and stuff, because that's more PvP scores that I can get towards my rankings. I'm not even scouting the buildings either. I've got good enough buffs here with my K40. I'm at about 3300% attacks on all troop types, that I'm probably with the exception of K42, I'm probably going to kill anything blind. And even the K42, I'm going to put a dent in whatever troops are in that building. I'm going to look at the report. I'm going to see what I should have sent, and then I'm either going to kill him or I'm going to look at my other phone and kill him with my K42. So either way, I'm not worried about the nature of the troops that are in these buildings. It's literally just don't scout, don't look, just send troops and rack in the points, right? Get them back to blue and do what you can. The other thing some of you may have noticed during this battle is my presets. So every time I send a PvP march here, or most times I'm sending a PvP march, I'm going to my T15 sliders and I'm filling up the remainder of my march size with T15. So my presets are actually set for a senior march buff config, but missing most of the T15. So what that means is that even if I send the march without a march size buff, I still get all my layers. I don't have that weird cutoff thing that sometimes happens. And it also means that depending on the situation, I can use a junior march size buff or a medium march size buff, and I'm still getting, like, I'll just have like a reduced amount of T15. Now, it takes an extra second or maybe half a second to slide that over. So it's not great in like All-Stars and Challenge where you're having to like join rallies like crazy fast. But for the purposes of like this, it's, you know, I'm playing on my own here. So, you know, I don't have to worry too much about that. The other thing is my secondary marches. So I have Gao for ground, and Iden for ranged. Bit of taunting on the male there, trying to get that K42 to do something or at least piss him off a little bit. So for my secondary ground and secondary ranged, I don't have presets for those, but because of the way I have my ground and range presets for my A teams, all I have to do is switch my generals, which is very, very quick because I have them favorited and basically no one else. And then I just have to slide up my T15 and I'm good to go. And I have all my layers, I don't lose anything, so on and so forth. So you'll see me using, whenever I'm not sending Charles, I think Gao's been in a building this whole time, but I move him around occasionally. But when I'm selecting Gao and whoever his assistant is, I can't remember off the top of my head, could be Miltiades, the overall march size for those two isn't as high as my primary generals. But again, it doesn't matter because of the way I have my presets set up. As long as I have a march size buff on, it doesn't matter if it's junior, medium, or senior, I'm still able to do the job. And then, speaking of march size buffs, I did only put a medium on for the last half of this battle. I'm a little bit stingy when it comes to using senior buffs for anything, really. So I was like, oh, I'll just use a medium for the rest of this battle. And it turns out later on I should have probably used a senior because, you know, some people heal and some other enemies turn up. But I didn't think, and at the time I just kind of barreled on with the medium buffs. So it is what it is. So yeah, we're still trying to control the map. Albeit probably exercising futility here. I have like 45 minutes left, and I'm at what is it, like 47,000 points? I think I saw on the screen. Yeah, 47k. So doing the math, right? I've got 40 minutes left. I'm getting like 400 points a minute if I have all the buildings, which I don't, so I'm getting more like 300 points a minute, maybe less. So what that means is that I've got tops 12,000 more I can get here. So that puts me at 48 plus 12, so that's like 60k is my max at this point, which is not enough for top 200. So I'm kind of I'm a little bit depressed here because I've already spent a ton of march speed ups and actual healing speeds, and it's not going to give me the points that I need to sustain my my rankings here. Again, the taunting is 13 versus 2, and I'm kind of mocking him a little bit that he's not more in the driver's seat. But again, that's just mind games to try and get him to do something. So, because again, if like I'm stuck at 60k here max, so if I can taunt them into doing something or having other players show up or healing or whatever, then that's just more points for me. So you've really got nothing to lose with the taunting here. So I don't know if they took a march, sorry, a mine healing speed or what, but that second biggest player did heal a little bit there, so I was able to get some hits in. So because that K40 had troops back, it kind of prompts me to go basically check all the other enemies that are on the map. So I'm not really going to scout anyone. I'm just going to blind hit a bunch of people and see if I get some troops. And because there's so many of them, this is going to kind of take a while to go around the houses and see who's got something. I think that the 3 bill guy probably took the mine heal and then also did some additional healing because he had way too many troops to have just had the 15%. Now, in the process of looking around the map, I did see a new player. I've just slowed it down to 2x again here real quick. So this was a guy that we hadn't previously seen, and I was able to get a nice little solo hit to wipe him out straight away. Back up to 5x again here. So yeah, really because of that team heal that they took, I'm able to go get a whole bunch more points from around the map. And, that isn't ever a guarantee, but it's a nice little bump to kind of save what was going to be not a great day from a point standpoint. So I'll be able to see my projected points here creeping up just as a result of being able to fire off on some of these guys. I have pretty much given in to the idea that I'm not going to be able to hold all the buildings. So as long as I've got the 6 portals, Constantinople, Knight's Hall, and then 4 or 5 others, I'm pretty happy. It beats the alternative, which is just killing myself trying to keep up with everybody going around the map. I did choose slot 1, which I live in Colorado, so that's like midnight to 2 a.m. So this was already at like 1:35 in the morning, and I was pretty tired. So I wanted the excuse to kind of chill and not have to worry too much about trying to play Benny Hill around the map with these guys anymore. The K42, I don't know if he took a team heal or if he also healed a little bit manually, but I was able to get a ton of solo hits in there. Most of them were for losses, but I mean, again, I've got such a high point lead margin at this point that it really doesn't matter. All it's costing me is more speeds in the hospital to heal my troops back, which, again, I say, like, I rarely use speeds for anything other than Ultimate War Season, so it's an acceptable thing for me to have to burn through so many of these. I somehow lost the Knight's Hall there, probably pulling Merlin out for the purposes of trying to kill the K42 again. So, again, sucks a little bit, but we're kind of on the home stretch here. So there's a couple of other things that are going to happen that are worth highlighting here. Obviously, I'm still in kind of kill mode since I'm not worrying too much about the buildings anymore. So, you probably haven't seen me use Alliance War Screen much here, but you end up kind of keeping a track on what's lag and what's new stuff and what's worth looking, what is worth keeping an eye on. And there's one particular player that hasn't really scouted or attacked any of the buildings of T1 for a while, and he's had some marches that have been ghosting on a couple of buildings, and they were 60-minute rallies that he put on way earlier in the fight, and I've realised that he's lost track of those rallies, and they're actually going to send. So I'm doing a little bit of work here to switch troops from the K-42 to make sure that my K-40 troops are waiting in those buildings for those ghost marches to go and splat on. So I'm just kind of shifting stuff around a little bit. The other thing that's happened here is another new player has turned up, and I'm slowing it right down here so that you guys can see the scout report. This is how to build a defense, by the way. His refines aren't perfect, but with the troops and the layers and everything that he's got and the refines, he's got 500 mil T1, and his buffs are not bad. For a new server, for a K40, they aren't the worst, right? Like, I'm a K40 and I've got, 2600 buffs, but like, that's, again, brand new server, like, that's really not bad. So, this is my process. I'm pulling a march out of a building that I don't really care about. I don't really want to pull from where those ghost marches are going to land, so I'm just switching my ranged B team out so that there is still something there for when it lands, and that's freed up Merlin or whoever to go kill this new guy. This first report that's going to come from this ranged attack is probably the best report. It's about even, and it's all downhill from here, so I'm going to go back to 5x. There's only 10 minutes left, but I'm going to attack this guy like 20 times, and he just doesn't die. And the reports get like proceedingly worse and worse. Like, I'm hitting him, losing 350, 400 mil of power every time, and there are reports where he's losing like 30 mil or 40 mil of power. So diminishing returns, but again, 8 minutes left. I want to take as many points as I possibly can, so at this point I don't care if I'm only killing like 3 troops every time I hit him. I can't lose, so it's just a case of hitting him as much as I can. So if this was like a regular battlefield with my main alliance, I'd be obviously bringing my K-42 and whoever else I could bring to kill this guy fast. As nice of a defense as he's got, he's kind of perfect for solos because of this massive like power imbalance and all these reports that I'm getting. But you bring 2 or 3 guys in a rally, he's not going to last more than 2 hits. But if I do that, I'm giving up a ton of PvP points to my K-42 in the last few minutes of the battle, which again, I'm in kind of desperation mode trying to get rankings here. So even though it's costing me an arm and a leg in healing speeds and march speed ups to send literally dozens of attacks against this guy, it's worth it. The K-42 is also healed, and because I think I've had a bit of a better experience hitting him than I had against this K-40, I've left the K-40 alone for a minute, and I hit that K-42 like 4 or 5 times until he was zeroed again, and then in the last under a minute left, I'm just throwing whatever I've got left at this guy to finally kill him, and any last gasps I can do, and that's it. So I'm slowing it right down now so you can kind of see the results. Healing speeds first. This is going to be ugly. Yeah, 21,000 days of healing, and I think I used like 3,000 or 4,000 of heals on my K-42 as well. The result though is solid. So 70k points is a really good result under the circumstances. That was not an easy battle by any means, and particularly since the enemies just did not give up, I'm pretty happy with the outcome. So closing remarks, I probably got maybe 60 to 70% of the building points I could have got, so that was at least 11 or 12,000 points that were left on the table. My K-42 also took 19,000 points. I'd probably say 70 to 80% of those were from PvP. So if I was a little bit stronger on my K-40, I could have at least skewed my score up to probably close to 80k, which is a much more comfortable top 200 place to be in than having 70k. where, you know, I need a couple of better performances than this to really secure that spot. But hopefully this has given you some insight as to how this strategy works, you know, how frantic and stressful it is. It's nice if you have 1 or 2 players that are reliable that you can trust to do this rather than trying to do it on 2 accounts. And, you know, if you've got any questions or want to reach out to me about doing this in game, hit me up and let me know. Alright, see you.